Students, welcome back. Let us continue with the same chapter questions MCQs, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Now look at the question 121. It is the wind pollination is commonly found in. See, wind pollination, that is anemophily, it is commonly seen in case of grasses. So in grasses, the most common method of pollination will be the wind pollination, so that it is usually in case of grasses. And next question, identify A to G in this figure. So the given diagram, it is a monocot seed having monocot embryo. In that they have given A to G. See, in that diagram, A, it is actually the pericarp. You know what is pericarp. So here we can find the pericarp, and B is the endosperm, that is the nutritive tissue, and C, it is the scutellum. Scutellum means it is a single cotyledon can be seen in case of monocot embryo. And D is the coleoptile. Here we can find E, it is actually the plumule part. The shoot tip is called as a plumule, and this shoot tip is covered by a sheath called as a D, that is a coleoptile. Similarly, F, it is the radicle or the root tip, which is enclosed by a sheath called as a coleorhiza. So when we look at the options here, option D is the correct answer. Option D is the correct answer. And next question. Next one, pollination by water is. It is usually rare in case of flowering plants. In pollination, it is usually rare in case of flowering plants, and it is usually limited about only 30 genera. It is only limited to 30 genera, and most of the genera are monocotyledons. Yes, the pollination, if it takes place by water or the hydrophily, it is usually rare in case of flowering plants, and usually limited up to 30 genera, and most of the genera are monocotyledons only. If we find pollination by water, it is usually very rare in flowering plants, only just up to 30 genera, and the 30 genera may be belonging to monocotyledons. That's why correct answer is all of the above. Next one, water is the main medium of transport for male gametes of. Option A, algae, B, bryophytes, C, pteridophytes, and D, all of these. See, in all these cases, in case of algae, bryophytes, and pteridophytes, water is the main medium of transport for male gametes. In the absence of water, the male gametes cannot reach the female gamete, and we cannot expect the fertilization also. So in case of these lower organisms, water is very essential, and water is the one and only medium for transport of male gametes, so that in all these plants water is the main medium. Next question, the distribution of pteridophytes. The distribution of pteridophytes and bryophytes is limited to some geographical zones only. So why the pteridophytes and bryophytes are distributed in a certain period, in a certain place or geographical area? See, it is mainly because they require water for fertilization. Where there is a availability of water or moisture, in that area only we can find the presence of pteridophytes and bryophytes, because they are mainly adapted in such a habitats because they need water. So without water they cannot complete their life cycle also. That's why they need water for fertilization. And next question, what indicates A in the below diagram or below figure? Actually, what you can see in the diagram, they are actually the carpels, and you know that the carpels may be free or carpels may be fused. If carpels are free, that is called as apocarpous condition. If carpels are fused, it is called as syncarpous condition. So in that diagram, the A, what they have labeled, it is actually the carpels, and the carpels are usually free. We can say that it is apocarpous condition, but they are asking only about A. It is they are the carpels. And next question, which of the following is incorrect for aquatic plants? So which of the following is incorrect for aquatic plants? Option A, Vallisneria and Hydrilla are freshwater plants pollinated by wind. And option B, Zostera, a marine grass, uses water as its pollinating agent. Option C, water hyacinth and water lily are pollinated by insects or wind. And most of the aquatic plant flowers emerges out of the water and are pollinated by wind or insects. So when we look at all the options, actually option A is actually incorrect. Why? Because Vallisneria and Hydrilla are freshwater plants only, and they have given that they are pollinated by wind. Here, wind pollination cannot be seen in case of Vallisneria and Hydrilla because they are completely submerged plant. When they are completely submerged, the pollination will be taken place with the help of water but not by the wind. But remaining all options are correct. Zostera, it is a marine grass, uses water for its pollinating agent, correct. Even water hyacinth and water lily, they are pollinated by insects or wind. Even though water hyacinth and water lily, they are the aquatic plants, they do not use water as a pollinating agent. Instead, they use insects or wind as a pollinating agent. And next one, most of the aquatic plant flowers emerges out of the water. Yes, most of the aquatic plants, they produces flowers above the surface of water, and they are usually pollinated by wind or insects. So here only option A is the incorrect statement. Next one, which one of the following is correct for aquatic plants? Option A, all aquatic plants use water for pollination. No, all aquatic plants cannot use water for pollination. And option B, not all aquatic plants use water for pollination. This statement is correct. And C, Vallisneria flowers are pollinated by water under the water surface. So this is Vallisneria flowers are pollinated by water under the water surface. So this is somehow correct but not exactly. And option D, all of the above. So they are asking the correct statement for aquatic plants. So here option B, not all aquatic plants use water for pollination. So why C is a little bit correct? Actually, in case of C, Vallisneria flowers are pollinated by water under the water surface. Here Vallisneria produces flowers above the surface of water, and they may be pollinated with the help of either wind or insects. That's why option C cannot also, it is also cannot be considered. Only option B is the correct answer. Next one, which one of the following is correct for Vallisneria? Option A, it grows in fresh water. Option B, female flowers or pollen grains reach the surface by long stalk. Option C, male flowers are released onto the surface of water. And option D, pollen grains are carried passively by water currents. So which is correct for Vallisneria? Which one of the following is correct for Vallisneria? Here all are correct only. A, B, C, D. Option D, all are correct. It grows in fresh water. Female flowers or pollen grains reach the surface by long stalk. This is also correct. Male flowers are released onto the water surface. So male flowers are usually they are submerged, but they are released with the help of water current, and pollen grains are carried passively by water currents. So all these are correct. Next question. In water pollinated species, option A, pollen grains are long and ribbon-like. All pollen grains are protected from getting wet. Flowers are not very colorful. They do not produce nectar. Even here also all options are correct, because in water pollinated species the pollen grains are usually long and they are ribbon like, and pollen grains are usually protected from wetting because they have a waxy coating or oily coating like that. So that's why they are protected from wetting. And flowers are not very not brightly colored or very colorful, and even they do not produce nectar. So all are correct. Next, identify A and B in this figure. The given diagram, it is actually a part of the embryo sac comprising of two synergids along with the polar nuclei. See, when we look at the A, it is actually the two polar nuclei. They undergo fusion. So when we look at the options, they are the polar nuclei only, and B indicates the two male gametes which are released into the synergids. So at the time of fertilization, the two male gametes which are carried by the pollen grain, they are released into any one of the synergid. So what we can see the B, it is actually the two male gametes. Next question. Amongst the pollinating agent, which one is the most dominant? So the most dominant pollinating agents is bees. Bees are the most common pollinating agents. We can see, or we can say that they are the dominant pollinating agent among the insects. Next one, which of the following is correct in reference to animal pollinated plants? So here butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, ants, moths and bats are common pollinating agents. Correct. Rodents, lizards, and primates are also pollinators in some species. Correct. Animal pollinated plants are specifically adapted for particular species. Yes, here all of the above. So all the options are correct. We can clearly observe that. So all statements are all options are exactly correct related to the animal pollinating plants. Next one, what are the parts A, B, C, D and E in this figure? So this is the gynoecium, and we can observe here A, it is the pollen tube. You can observe. So here this is the stigma, style and ovary part having a ovule. So here these are the pollen grains which are germinating, and at the time of germination they produce the pollen tube. So what the A they have labeled, it is actually the pollen tube. And B, so here it is embryo sac having at the chelacal end they comprising of 3 cells called as antipodals. At the micropylar end they contain 3 cells called agapparatus. In the center there are 2 polar nuclei. So here B represents the 3 antipodals. As they are towards the chelacal end, these are the antipodals. And C represents the polar nuclei, 2 polar nuclei. And D represents the egg cell. So they have labeled the D, it is the egg cell, and E, these two are the synergids. So A is the pollen tube, B antipodals, C polar nuclei, D is the egg cell, and E is the 2 synergids. So option B, here when we look at the options, option B is correct. So you can clearly observe in the diagram, option B is the correct one. And next question, insect pollinated plants are large and colorful, and they are fragrant, rich in nectar. Of course, the insect pollinated plants are usually, they are large and they are brightly colored. That's why we will call it as colorful. And even they emit fragrance, and even they can secrete the nectar. So that all of this. Next one, the fall odor secreted by flowers are pollinated by. If the flowers which are pollinated by if the fall odor secreted by flowers are pollinated by certain flowers emitting a fall odor, in such cases, in such flowers the pollination mainly takes place with the help of flies and beetles. So we have given so many examples for the flies and beetles. So usually they help in pollination in the flowers which emit a fall odor. Next one, the reward produced by plants to their animal visitors is in the form of, the floral rewards are commonly known as nectar as well as the pollen grain. So the reward given to the reward produced by plants to the animal visitors is usually nectar and pollen grain. So that option C is the correct answer. Next one, which one of the following is correct for animal pollinated plants? Option A, nectar and pollen grains are usual floral rewards. It is correct. Option B, to harvest the rewards from the flower, animal come in contact with anther and stigma. Yes, in order to obtain the floral rewards, that is nectar and pollen, the animal visitor has to come in contact with the anther and stigma. And next option, animal carrying the pollen, when they come in contact with the stigma, it brings about pollination. So when the animal visitor visits a flower, it usually visits the anther or stigma. At that time it will collect the pollen grains, and when it goes to some other flower, it helps in bringing the pollination. So all the statements are correct. Next one, Amorphophallus provide floral rewards is in the form of, Amorphophallus, the world's tallest flower called as Amorphophallus, which usually provide a floral reward in the form of option A, that is providing safe place for laying eggs. So usually it is a tubular like flower, the flower having a tubular curve. So in this curve, the certain species can able to lay its eggs. That's why Amorphophallus, it provides the floral reward is in the form of providing a safe place. Not like nectar or pollen grain, it provides a safe place for laying eggs for certain species. Next one, which of the following is correct for the relationship existence between moth and yucca plant? You know that Pranuba moth and yucca plant, they have a mutual symbiotic association. They have a mutual association. Let us see the options. Option A, moth and the plant cannot complete their life cycle without each other. Yes, this is true because without each other, moth and plant cannot complete their life cycle. If there is an absence of moth, the yucca plant cannot complete its life cycle. If there is an absence of yucca plant, moth cannot complete its life cycle. And option B, moth deposits eggs in the locule of the ovary and the flower, and in turn flower gets pollinated by the moth. So how moth will be moth helps for the yucca plant means it usually lays eggs in the locule of the ovary, and at the same time it helps in pollination also, which means the yucca plant can be pollinated only with the help of the Pranuba moth. And option C, larva of the moth comes out of the eggs as the seed starts developing. So in the flower, as a fertilization, pollination taking place and fertilization taking place, the seeds will be developing. At the time of development of seeds, the larva of the moth will be coming out of the eggs. So here all the options are exactly correct related to the moth and yucca plant. Next one, what indicates A, B, C and D in the given figure? So it is actually a mature dicot embryo comprising of C when we look at the options also. So here A, it is actually the suspensor, so which usually provides a support for the embryo or supporting for the two cotyledons. So option A, it is the suspensor. So this is usually the suspensor region. And B, it is the radicle. So B is the radicle, and C, this is the plumule part, and D is the two cotyledons. A is suspensor, B is a radicle, this is a plumule, and D is the two cotyledons. So in the options, option C is the correct answer. Next question, seed. So what is a seed? Seed is a fertilized ovule. You all know that ovule only after fertilization develops into seed. That's why we will call it as a fertilized ovule. Next one, a typical seed consists of. So what are the structures we can see in a typical seed? We can observe a seed coat, cotyledons, one or two cotyledons, and even embryonal axis. A typical seed usually comprising of a seed coat, because all seeds are enclosed by seed coat, and they may contain one or two cotyledons. If it is a monocot, it is comprising of one cotyledon. If it is a dicot, it consists of two cotyledons, and both monocot and dicot seeds comprising of an embryonal axis. So that all of this. Next one, all are examples of albuminous seeds except. So here what is albuminous seeds? The seeds with endosperm. If the seeds contain endosperm, they are called as albuminous seeds, which means endosperm, it is a nutritive tissue which will be utilized by the developing embryo. But in certain species, embryo will not utilize the endosperm completely. In such seeds, we can find the presence of little amount of endosperm. Such seeds are known as albuminous seeds or endospermic seeds. So here they have given certain examples, and all are albuminous seeds except one. So here the albuminous seeds are wheat, sunflower and castor. So all these three, the wheat, sunflower and castor, are the albuminous seeds having endosperm, but groundnut, it is non-endospermic or ex-albuminous seeds, as it does not contain endosperm. Next one, the following figure represents. So it is actually the globular embryo. When we look at the developing stages of embryo, in that we will come to know the globular embryo, heart-shaped embryo, mature embryo. So this is a typical globular embryo, because depending upon the shape. So this is a globular shape. Later it will be transformed into heart shape, and later it gets converted into cotyledon shape. And next question, persistent nucellus, which means a perisperm, it is found in. You know that nucellus is also a nutritive tissue. Even it is also utilized at the time of development of embryo or during the developmental stages. It is also utilized by the embryo. But in some seeds, the nucellus will not be completely utilized. It remains as a thin layer around the endosperm. Around the endosperm, we can observe a thin layer of nucellus that is called as a persistent nucellus or perisperm. So persistent nucellus or perisperm, it is usually found in case of black pepper. So we have few examples where the nucellus or persistent nucellus is present. One is black pepper, other one castor. So here option D, it is the correct one, black pepper. Next one, wheat. Wheat, what is the, sorry, it is not wheat. So what is the ploidy of perisperm? What is the ploidy of perisperm? You know that perisperm, it is the remnants of nucellus or persistent nucellus. Nucellus, it is usually diploid tissue. As it is a persistent nucellus, even that is also diploid in nature. So nucellus is always diploid. That's why the perisperm, the persistent nucellus, is also diploid. And next question, select the total number of albuminous seeds from the following. So here they have given 7 examples. So out of 7, only 5. So here only 5 are albuminous, which means they contain endosperm, and 2 they do not contain endosperm. They are ex-albuminous seeds. So here pea and groundnut, these two are non-endospermic or ex-albuminous seeds. Remaining all are endospermic or albuminous seeds. So out of these, only 5 are the endospermic or albuminous seeds. Next one, mature seed contains how much moisture generally? A mature seed usually contains 10 to 15% by mass. When we look at the mass of the seeds, we will come to know that they contain usually 10 to 15% of the moisture content. Next one, select the false statement from the following. Option E, persistent nucellus is the perisperm. It is correct. Option B, integuments of ovule harden as though protective seed coat, which means the integuments of the ovule later develops into the seed coat. It is right. And option C, micropyle remains as a small pore in the seed coat and facilitates the entry of oxygen and water into seed during germination. Yes, the small opening called as micropyle, which remains as a small pore even after the seed formation, because they facilitate the entry of oxygen and water during seed germination. And option D, general metabolic activity of the embryo is high. It is wrong, because the metabolic activity will be decreases, or we can say that it is usually static. The general metabolic activity of the embryo decreases, or it is in the resting period but not high. So that option D, it is the false statement. And next one, the favorable conditions available for germination are. So when the seed can able to germinate, that condition is called as a favorable condition. So what will be the favorable condition for the seed germination means they require adequate moisture content, oxygen and suitable temperature. So all these are very important for the seed germination. They must and should require moisture content, and they need oxygen also, and even suitable temperature is also very essential for the seed germination. Next question, example of false fruit. Example of false fruit. So what is the false fruit means? Usually the fruit will be developed from the ovary, or we can say that after fertilization the ovary develops into the fruit. But in certain plant species, the fruit will be developed other than that of the ovary. The fruit formed other than that of the ovary, such fruits are called as false fruits. So here also they are asking examples for false fruit: apple, strawberry, cashew and all of these. So all are actually the false fruits, because they are not developed from the ovary part. Instead they may be developed from the thalamus part. Next one, thalamus takes part in fruit formation in case of guava, orange, strawberry and mango. In case of strawberry, as we have given strawberry, so strawberry, it is the example for false fruit. In this strawberry, the thalamus will be taking part in the fruit formation. That's why example is strawberry. And next one, identify the parts A, B, C and D in this figure. So actually in this figure, when we look at the monocot seed and dicot seed, you can observe the parts. So here A, it is actually the seed coat, it is a monocot seed. So in this diagram, A is the seed coat, B is the endosperm, the nutritive tissue, and C, it is the cotyledon, a single cotyledon, and D, it is the hypocotyl root axis. So this is the hypocotyl and root axis, it is the root axis. So option A, it is the seed coat, B is endosperm, C is the cotyledon, and D is the hypocotyl root axis. Therefore the correct option will be option A. And next one, which of the following is an example of a dry fruit? So dry fruit examples for a dry fruit is groundnut, mustard, both A and B, and mango. So here both A and B, groundnut and mustard, both are examples for dry fruit. And next one, fruit develops from. Usually fruit develops from the ovary part. That's why already we told you, I told you ovary only develops into fruit, so that the fruit develops from the ovary. Next question, the fruit developed without fertilization is known as. The fruit developed without fertilization is known as parthenocarpy. So parthenocarpy, it is a special case of phenomena where the fruits are developed without fertilization. See, generally after fertilization the ovary develops into fruit, but here without fertilization only the fruits will be developed. Such phenomena is called as parthenocarpy. And next one, what is true about parthenocarpic fruit? They are seedless. Banana is an example, and they can be induced by growth hormones. Here all are exactly related to parthenocarpic fruits, because parthenocarpic fruits are always seedless as there is no fertilization taken place, and banana is one such example for parthenocarpic fruit. And option C, they can be induced by growth hormones. Yes, with the help of certain growth hormones we can induce parthenocarpic fruits. Like seedless grapes you may have seen, they are all induced with the help of growth hormones. And next question, select the false statement. Option A, hard seed coat provides protection to the young embryo. Correct. Option B, generally seed is the product of sexual reproduction, so they generate new genetic combination leading to variation. So as the seeds are the products of sexual reproduction, they always leads to variation or formation of new genetic material. Correct. New genetic recombination. Option C, seeds have better adaptive strategies for dispersal to new habitat and help the species to colonize in other areas. As they have better adaptive strategies, the seeds can able to dispersal to a new habitat, and there also they can able to germinate and they can able to produce a new plant. And option D, pollination and fertilization in angiosperm dependent on water. It is exactly the wrong answer, because pollination or fertilization in angiosperm, they do not require water at all. That's why option D is the wrong answer. Next question, which oldest seed is excavated from Arctic tundra? The oldest seed is known as lupin seed. Its complete scientific name is Lupinus arcticus. So the oldest seed is known as Lupinus arcticus. Lupinus arcticus. Next one, Phoenix dactylifera. It is actually a 2000-year-old viable seed and a type of date palm. Yes, of course. And excavated from King Herod's palace near the Dead Sea. So all these are exactly correct related to the Phoenix dactylifera. It is the recent discovery, a 2000-year-old viable seed, and it is a type of date palm tree and excavated from King Herod's palace. Next question, apomixis. Remaining questions are related to apomixis and polyembryony. Let us see. Apomixis is seen in case of, they can be seen commonly in case of Asteraceae, and even they can be seen in grasses. So option C is the correct answer. Both in case of Asteraceae and grasses we can see the presence of apomixis. But what is apomixis means? It is the formation of seeds without fertilization. Generally after fertilization only the ovule develops into seed, but here in case of apomixis we will define apomixis like this. It is a kind of sexual reproduction which mimics a sexual reproduction. Sorry, it is a kind of asexual reproduction which mimics sexual reproduction and produces seeds without fertilization. Here seeds can be obtained without fertilization. So next, apomixis means seeds without fertilization. Next, polyembryony is. So what do you mean by polyembryony? Poly refers to many, embryony refers to many number of embryos. So what is polyembryony? It is more than one embryo in a seed. In a seed, if you find more than one embryo, the condition is said to be the polyembryony. Next, polyembryony is seen in case of citrus fruits. Like for example, in case of lemon, orange, in such citrus fruits we can find a polyembryonic condition. In one seed we can observe many number of embryos. And next one, which of the following is correct for yucca plant? Option A, moth species and yucca plant cannot complete their life cycle without each other. This is right. The moth deposits eggs in the locules of the ovary of yucca plant. Correct. The larva of the moth came out of the eggs as the seed starts developing of the yucca plant. All of the above. So here all options are exactly correct about the yucca plant. Next one, the devices developed by plants to discourage self-pollination includes. So what are the devices which are developed by the plants to discourage self-pollination, which means they are discouraging the self-pollination and they promote cross-pollination. So option A, in some species the pollen release and receptive stigma are not synchronized. It is in case, see, in certain species, even if they are bisexual flowers, both anther and stigma lie very close to each other, but also there will not be a synchronization, which means at the time of release of pollen grains, the stigma may be not ready to accept the pollen grains. If in some other cases, if the stigma may be ready to accept the pollen grain, but the anther is immature and it doesn't releases the pollen grain, that is called as synchronization. So in certain species, the pollen release and receptive stigma are not synchronized. So this is one best method for cross pollination. And in some species, the anther and stigma are placed at different positions, so they do not come in contact. Yes, in certain plant species, the anther and stigma, they are placed in different position. Maybe the length will be variable in case of anther and stigma. That is also one mechanism that helps in promoting cross-pollination. And self-incompatibility. The pollens of the same flower cannot able to germinate on the stigma of the same flower. That is called self-incompatibility. So all these are promoting the cross-pollination and discouraging the self-pollination. So all are correct. Next one, dioecy is the mechanism for some plants to promote cross-pollination. Dioecy refers to both male and female sex organs are present on two different plants, or we can say that male flowers are present in one plant and female flowers are present in one plant at that time. So they usually promote cross-pollination and there is no chance for self-pollination as the flowers are produced on two different plants. That condition is called as dioecy, and the dioecy mainly promotes cross-pollination. Next one, in castor and maize plant, the flowers are. So in castor and maize, both male and female flowers are produced on the same plant. See, these two are the monoecious plants. They contain monoecious means both male and female flowers are produced in the same plant. I am not saying that male and female sex organs are present in the same flower. That is not I am saying. So here I am saying male flower containing androecium, female flower containing gynoecium, both the flowers are present in the same plant. So that's why they are monoecious. And next one, autogamy and geitonogamy is absent in. It is usually absent in case of papaya, because papaya, it is a bisexual plant and it is a unisexual plant. Papaya, it is a unisexual plant. You can observe in only certain plants of papaya only we can find the presence of fruit formation, because some papaya plants having only female flowers and some papaya plants having only male flowers. As the male and female flowers are produced on two different plants, here autogamy and geitonogamy both are absent. So autogamy, it is the pollination or release of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the same flower. So there is no chance for the pollination in the same flower, as the flowers are born on two different plants. Even getinogamy, the transfer of pollen grains from one flower to the stigma of another flower within the same plant. So within the same plant also it is not possible, as the flowers are produced entirely on two different plants. So here autogamy and getinogamy both are absent in papaya. So here only xenogamy is possible. Next question, the pollen pistil interaction refers to. So what do you mean by pollen pistil interaction? Option A, pistil's ability to recognize the pollen, which means all pollens cannot be germinated on the stigma. So because of the pistil having the ability to recognize whether the pollen of right type or wrong type. And B, acceptance of pollen to promote post-pollination events. So the stigma has the ability to accept the pollen grain if they are compatible. If they are compatible only, they will promote the pollen germination or post-pollination events, and both are incorrect. Here both A and B are correct. Pollen pistil interaction refers to both the pollens and pistil, they are interacting with each other, and pistil has the ability to recognize the pollen and it will promote the post-pollination events if they are compatible. Next one, the acceptance and rejection by continuous dialogue between pollen grain and pistil mediated by chemical components of pollen and pistil results in pollen pistil interaction. So we can define the pollen pistil interaction like this. It is the acceptance and rejection by continuous dialogue between pollen grain and pistil mediated by chemical components, because the chemical components on the stigma as well as the pollen, they will be interacting and results in pollen pistil interaction. Next question, during the pollen pistil interaction, the chemical components are released from both pollen as well as pistil. So even we can find the presence of chemicals on the pollen, even on the stigma. So both will be interacting and resulting in the pollen pistil interaction. That's why option C is the correct answer. The chemicals must be released both from pollen and pistil. Next, what happens when the pollen falls on the stigma? So what happens when the pollen falls on the stigma? If they are compatible, the pollen grains will germinate, otherwise they cannot able to germinate. If the pollen grains falls on the stigma, only the compatible pollen grains germinates. And next one, the pore from which the pollen tube germinates. The pore from which the pollen tube germinates is germ pore, because when we look at the structure of pollen grain, so here the intine layer, it is usually made up of cellulose and pectin. So at certain regions, here there will be another layer called as exine layer. An exine layer, it is usually a discontinuous layer. At certain regions, the sporopollen is not deposited. That region is called as a germ pore, and this germ pore helps in the formation of pollen tube at the time of pollen germination, so that the pore from which the pollen tube germinates is known as germ pore. So these are certain questions. Remaining questions we can discuss in the next class.